Yate, my relatives. Hello, it's Mark Charles. And I want to talk to you today about it's my reminder I try to give every 12 to 15 months, which is white people are not superior. Now, you may be asking, why do you keep bringing this topic up? Why is this such an important thing to talk about? Well, that's what I want to discuss today because we are surrounded by lies of the inferiority of people of color, the inferiority of people from LGBTQ, the inferiority of women or people from non-binary genders. And we're told all these times, and we try to counter that by saying Black Lives Matter, Native Lives Matter, these people matter, and they're human and we're equal. But the fact that we are considered to be inferior is only part of the lie. The other half of the lie is that white people are superior. And so if we want to have a dialogue on a human to human, a peer to peer level, yes, we absolutely need to raise up the people from the margins. But we also need to lower the people who think they're above everybody else. And it's at that human level that we need to have the connection. And so today, like I do every 12 to 15 months, I want to talk about the fact that white people are not superior. I invite you to grab your favorite cup of your morning or midday beverage and join me for my second cup of coffee, and let's have a conversation. My relatives, before I begin, I want to do like I always do and acknowledge that I am speaking to you from what are Piscataway lands. I moved here from the Navajo Nation with my family about a decade ago, 10 years ago. We were living in Fort Defiance, Arizona, and now we live here in what is today called Washington, D.C., but these are actually the traditional lands of the Piscataway, and I want to honor the Piscataway as the hosts of the lands where I'm living. I want to thank the Episcopal for their stewardship of these lands and just state and remind myself how humbling it is to be moving, breathing, living, walking, existing on these lands today. So my Piscataway relatives, thank you for your stewardship of these lands. I'm excited to see some people on with me today. Let me see if anyone's jumped on the chat. Gapsfire23, good to have you on. Good afternoon. There's a few places around the country where it's still morning out on the West Coast and in Hawaii. And I think even in the mountain time zone, it's only 11:30 right now. So for a part of the nation, Bine, for the rest of the nation here on the east side, my relatives, it's good to be with you. I thank you for joining me for my second cup of coffee. So let's just jump right into this, right? Several years ago, I was on social media and I was thinking about the challenges that we face as a nation. I had obviously been speaking for a long time about the doctrine of discovery and the racist and sexist and white supremacist foundations of our nation. There was a Black Lives Matter movement going on. People were talking about Native Lives Matter, and we were discussing all these things. And what I realized is that while it's important, it's absolutely important that we acknowledge the humanity of the people from the margins, full humanity. That's really only part of the lie. Because the lie of white supremacy, the lie of the doctrine of discovery, the lies that exist within the founding documents of this nation is not only that Native Americans are savages, our Africans are 3/5 of a person, our women are never mentioned. It's that white people, specifically white landowning men, are not only fully human, but superior and above everybody else. And the challenge with that lie is it's not just about saying, oh, we have to acknowledge the humanity of everyone who's below. I mean, that's important. But we also need to lower the people who think they're at the top. Now, the interesting part about that, and I experienced this the first time I maybe tweeted out or put on my social media, I forget where exactly I posted it. I put up, white people are not superior. And someone literally called me a racist when I posted that. And it made me laugh because I'm like, can you, just by stating the fact that white people are not superior, someone read that and said, that's racism. And this is how foundational this belief is. And this is why it's so important to counter that lie. Because it's not just about lifting up the lower, it's about lowering the people who think they're higher. And for a demographic of people who have acted, been treated, and established a world and a worldview that says they are superior, they are above everybody else, being treated as human is going to feel diminishing for them. It's going to feel like they're being attacked. It's going to feel like, why are you not giving me the privileges that I've experienced and enjoyed all of my life? Well, because that's not a human experience, right? You're living at a point that is not, it's not appropriate. And so we have to talk about how do we acknowledge the fact that not only are the rest of us fully human, but white people are not superhuman. And so this is the work that we need to really, I want to begin talking about today, and that I want to go into. And the reason this is important, right? Because there's a lot of people, especially white people, who may say to me, well, Mr. Charles, I don't really think that way, and that's not how I feel, and I try to treat everybody the same. And I don't disagree. There are a lot of white people who try to reject or not live into the reality that says not only are people from the margins inferior, but they are superior. But the problem is when that's the worldview, when that's the religious environment, when that's the political environment, when that's the social and the economic environment that you swim in on a daily basis, that belief, that implicit belief seeps into your consciousness, and you begin to just kind of accept it and believe it. And I need to say it right now, because right now we see at a national level politically how the Trump administration and the Republican Party is basically blasting out that they're superior. I want to just give you a few examples of this. So obviously, Trump is being Trump is in cahoots with Stephen Miller to enact a very radical agenda on immigration. I don't know all of Stephen Miller's story, but the guy is not healthy, just to say the least, and has a very, very, very broken worldview. I would probably call him traumatized. If you want to, this show is not going to be about what I call the trauma of white America. But that is absolutely something. If you watch the way both Stephen Miller and Donald Trump respond to people from the margins, they are acting out as people who do not know what to do with the injustice and the dehumanization and the violence and genocide that they're standing on, that gives them their place in the world. And so they are traumatized. And I've had a whole conversation. I've written about this extensively in my book, and I'm not going to go into it right now, but there's a lot going on with Mr. Miller, and it's not healthy. But what's going on is that there are literally, ICE is going on raids throughout the country, and they're going into places where migrant workers are looking for work, are doing jobs. And when I say migrant, I literally have to say it's implied people of color, right? Those are the migrants. They're not looking for white migrants. They're looking for people of color. And they are absolutely profiling people of color and then getting them out of the country as quickly as possible. And in the midst of all this has been going on, and I'm not telling you anything new. I've had several guests on, Michelados and others, who have talked about what's going on within immigration and with what our country is doing, and people are aware. But in the middle of all this, and this was several months ago now, Trump very publicly and with a ton of media welcomed 59 white South Americans into this nation as refugees, and talked about how they were being mistreated and unjustly treated in the country of South Africa because they're white. And again, I could do a whole episode just on the history of South America and the history of white supremacy there and what they have done to people of color and people from the margins in that country. If you don't know that, just go look it up. There's a ton of information out there. But so Trump was saying that the white people of South Africa were being mistreated, and he had to bring them from South Africa here to the United States, and he welcomed them with open arms as the president, and welcomed them as refugees. And so we have these two contrasting, not only narratives, but images, where migrants and immigrants and refugees of color are being called violent criminals and literally being hunted down, and without judicial review being not only deported from our country, but put into jails, horrific jails in other nations around the globe. And while that is happening and communities of color are living in literal terror, Trump welcomes white people, calls them refugees, and welcomes them into this country. There's a narrative there, and the narrative is that people of color are inferior and white people are superior. That's the narrative. And it gets played out. Trump is unfortunately very good at playing out a narrative and making notes. He knows how to use social media and how to use the media to paint a picture. And he's done that very, very well. Now, at the same time, there's been more articles going on recently. This is just one example of an executive order. I talked about this a few weeks ago, where Trump gave an executive order several months ago, basically saying that anytime someone finds a disparaging account of America at our national parks, on a plaque, or in a description of an event or something that happened there regarding something in our nation's history that makes Americans look bad, they can report it, and it will be reviewed and possibly removed or changed. And again, I could do a whole episode on what I call the trauma of white America and the perpetration-induced traumatic stress that I observe happened to the white undocumented immigrants who came over here incredibly violently up to several hundred years ago and have been running around acting like they own the place ever since. I'm not going to go into that. But if you look at what Trump is doing, this message, right, he's not referring to people like me to go to the Lincoln Memorial and say, hey, why are we celebrating a president who blatantly, clearly stated he was a white supremacist, never abolished slavery, but protected it in our Constitution? We have a plaque here hanging that says he doesn't give a crap about Black lives. And he's also one of the most ethnically cleansing genocidal presidents in our nation's history, as he sought to ethnically cleanse the northern, central, and southern routes of the railway. Again, if you don't know that history, read my book, Unsettling Truths, chapters 9 and 10, go in depth into that history, or just Google Mark Charles Abraham Lincoln. You'll find many, many videos up there that I have talked extensively about that. But Trump is not looking for someone like me, a native man, to come out and say, hey, why are we celebrating a white supremacist, ethnically cleansing, genocidal man like Abraham Lincoln? No, he's looking, and I'm going to share this article with you. The New York Times just ran an article about some of the things that people are reporting and that are in danger of being brought down, are things that highlight the horrors of slavery and the mistreatment of people from the margins by white people. And they're saying, yeah, you can't talk bad about our founding fathers. You can't talk bad about these historical heroes that we have. And those are the things that are getting reported. And so, right, what this communicates is that the narrative of the United States, and you know the adage, the victors write the history, the narrative of the United States has to point to the positive the good of the United States of America. And it cannot dwell on or highlight or point out the incredible flaws and problems, and not just we had in our future, that exist in our nation today. I've talked about this extensively, right? When Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, he started the mantra, "Make America Great Again." That was his statement. Hillary Clinton responded. She was running against him, and she told her supporters, "America is great already." That was her response. At the Democratic National Convention, President Obama jumps into the fray, and he says, as our nation's first Black president, "America is already great." Cory Booker, an African-American senator from New Jersey, aspiring to run for president, and he did in 2020. He gets on the stage at the Democratic National Convention, and he, in his speech endorsing Hillary Clinton, acknowledges that our Declaration of Independence calls Native savages, acknowledges our Constitution refers to African people as 3/5 of a person, acknowledges that women are never mentioned in our foundations. He acknowledges these three major flaws of our foundations. But then he says to the white landowning men of the Democratic Party, "But these and other dark parts of our history do not detract from America's greatness." Now, why does he do that? Why does he say that? Because he's planning to run for president. And if you want to run for president, the path to that office runs through the first caucuses in Iowa and the first primary in New Hampshire. Iowa is the fifth widest state in the union and has the highest rate of private lands of any state in the country. New Hampshire is the third widest state in the union and has the highest rate of home ownership of any state in the country. In Iowa and New Hampshire, retail politics are the norm, right? By the time you get to the end of the election, all the members of the citizens of Iowa and New Hampshire are sick of the candidates. They've met them all. They've been in their backyards. They've met them at the fair. They've heard them in gymnasiums. You know, it's not uncommon for candidates to visit every county in Iowa. I mean, the people who live there, if you ever talk to them, they are sick of the candidates because they've met them all. They know them all. They've heard them all in person, shook their hands. And they're tired of them. Because campaigning in Iowa and New Hampshire starts almost a year before it begins in the rest of the country. And it's retail politics. And so if you want to be the nominee of your party, you have to take an entire year before you even fully start your campaign, before the first primary even comes, and convince the white landowning men of Iowa and New Hampshire that you're safe. Which is exactly what President Obama did when he ran in 2008. Read his book. His whole campaign strategy hinged on him winning Iowa, which meant making himself safe to white landowning men there. Cory Booker, right, wanted to run in 2020. So he knew he could not just point out the flaws of our foundation. He had to assure the white landowning men of the Democratic Party that these flaws do not detract from their greatness. You see, the myth of American exceptionalism, which is a bipartisan value, it exists in both the Democrats and the Republicans, is not just a myth that says America is better at things than other nations. It's a myth that says we have a different relationship with God than the other nations. This is why we claim things like manifest destiny. This is why the term "a city on a hill" is such a popular topic among politicians for national office. This is why President Obama called his biography "A Promised Land," right? Because when you have promised lands, that gives you a right to ethnically cleanse the savages who live in your land. And it's that lie, that myth of American exceptionalism, which is based on the lie of white supremacy, that's at the foundation of our national identity, of white people's identity here. And this is why American exceptionalism is a bipartisan value. If you don't believe me, right, look at President Obama. When he won the presidency in 2008, he was accused, literally accused, of going on an apology tour and not validating and holding up the myth of American exceptionalism loud enough and strong enough. And watch his speeches throughout his term in office. He learned his lesson. He got those rebukes and he learned his lesson. And by the time he left office in 2016, he was espousing the myth of American exceptionalism better than most white people were. Again, at the Democratic National Convention, Trump is saying, "Make America great again." What's he literally saying? He's saying our past was great. Our past, which includes a history of enslavement, a history of ethnically cleansing Native Americans, a history of Jim Crow laws and segregation, a history of internment camps and mass incarceration of people of color. Our foundations that state natives are savages and Africans are 3/5 of a person. All of these things are great. And Trump in 2016 was saying, we used to be great and we are not great today. And Trump, Hillary Clinton's response and President Obama's response and Cory Booker's response was, no, we've always been great. We've always been great. We're great now, and we were great then. Those things don't detract from our greatness. During the 2020 or the 2016 campaign, during the debates, Hillary Clinton was debating Donald Trump. He was wandering around the stage like a bug wanders around a light. Hillary Clinton was expanding on her position that America is great already. And she said, in fact, America is great because America is good. Donald Trump stopped, looked directly at her, pointed to her, and says, I agree with her. I agree with everything she just said. They agreed. America's past, America's history, America's foundations are great. They disagreed if we were great today. Donald said no and Hillary said yes. But they both affirmed and espoused the myth of American exceptionalism, which is based on the lie of white supremacy and includes the false narrative that white people from Europe are God's chosen people, and Turtle Island, these lands from the Atlantic to the Pacific, are their promised lands, which justifies their history of enslavement and genocide. And because the victors write the history, America has done, depending which side you look at it from, either a very good or very poor job of recording its history, because we don't study most of these things in our schools. We don't learn that Abraham Lincoln was a blatant, unapologetic, self-proclaimed white supremacist and one of the most genocidal presidents in our nation's history. We don't teach that. We don't talk about these things. And as our nation has begun in the past few decades, beginning in the 60s and 70s and 80s, to wrestle with some of its history as we had a civil rights movement and begin to extend rights and try to wrestle with what do we do. Trump got into office by saying, we're not going to go that route anymore. We're not even going to pretend. We're not even going to wrestle with it. We are going to merely state how great we are. We're not going to talk about anything that makes us as a nation and as white people look bad. And so this is why it's important to not just respond to Trump by saying, Black Lives Matter. This part of our history matters. Native lives matter. LGBTQ matter. It's not only important we say that, we have to say the other part. We have to counter the other lie. We have to tell them that white people are not superior. See, the challenge is that white people are up here and they treat the rest of us like we're down here. Good white people go down and drop off some charity and then go back up. Really good white people go down here and try to lift the people up here a little bit. But again, the problem is that life up here is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Life up here requires the oppression of people down here. And so while we do have to lift up the people who are treated as less than, we also need to massively lower the people who think they're more than, they're greater than, because we have to find a way to meet on this human level, this plane of humanity. And it's not up here. Where white people are is not the enviable position. It's not the goal. It's not where we should strive to be, because living up here is not sustainable. Yes, people from the margins need to be treated as humans. Absolutely. But our goal is not to get up here, because up here is not sustainable. We have to bring it down here where we all meet on the human level. And that's why once a year, I put out controversial posts and I get on my second cup of coffee and I remind people that white people are not superior. They are not in the enviable position. What they have is not sustainable, and we should not strive to be like them. The world cannot exist with us all being billionaires. We can't do it. The United States, I forget the stats, they're off the top of my head, but we're like 5% of the global population. And we consume like 25 or 30% of the world's renewable resources every year. If the entire world consumed like the United States of America does, our renewable resources on an annual basis would be depleted by the middle of spring. The way we live, our country, is not sustainable. And so we have to, yes, lift up the people from the margins, but we also need to lower the people who think they're more than, so we can all connect and exist and walk at a human level. And that's my work. That's my goal. So, my relatives, this is what it means to walk in beauty. Sometimes you have to say things that sound offensive, right? Like I said, I was called a racist for reminding white people they weren't superior. I'm not being racist. I'm stating a truth, a fact. White people are not superior. I don't envy them. I don't want what they have. I want to learn how to live at a human level, understanding not only my full humanity, but the full humanity of even people who would consider themselves to be my opponents. I believe this is what it means to walk in beauty. And this is why I'm doing the work I do. This is why I share with you my second cup of coffee once a week. This is why I've written books like Unsettling Truth. This is why I'm doing my Common Memory tour, going around the country talking about Christian nationalism, creation stories, and corn. Not to cancel people, not to shame people, not to embarrass people, to teach, create a common memory so that maybe, possibly, for the very first time, we might have healthy community across racial lines. That's my goal. If you've heard about my common memory tour, I'm very excited about it. I just got back this last week. I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. I had an event in Chattanooga, or just outside of Chattanooga, and another event in Atlanta. They went well, and I'm really working to refine my presentation. It's been fairly long at some points. I have a lot of content, and I'm narrowing it down and really streamlining it and making it much more concise. My daughter's been traveling with me before she goes off to college, and she's been helping me to refine my talk and get the more necessary threads there and take out some of the extra things I've been adding in. But I have two more events coming up. And the first event is going to be on Thursday. That's the wrong one. On Thursday, July 31. And I am going to be at Ronald United Methodist Church in Shoreline, Washington, which is just north of Seattle. And I'm very excited to be there. Some friends and partners of mine are helping me set up and get this event organized. And if you are in the Pacific Northwest and you would like to join my event, this event is open to the public. We're in a very big room, so we have room for a lot of people to come in. And so I invite you, if you have friends or family who live in the Seattle area and would like to hear me speak and talk about Christian nationalism, creation stories, and corn, I invite you to let them know about this event. It's going to be on July 31st. That's a Thursday at 7 to 9 p.m. at the Ronald United Methodist Church in Shoreline, Washington, just north of Seattle. And then on Saturday, August 2nd, I'm going to be at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and I think that's called the Dalles, the Dalles in Oregon. It's east of Portland, about an hour or so, I believe. I'm being hosted by the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. My good friend Sarah Augustine and the group that she's working with are going to host me at 7 o'clock on Saturday, August 2nd. And this event is also open to the public. So if you're in the Portland, Oregon area or east of Portland and would like to come and join, I invite you to come and join this event as well. I'm very excited for both of these events. If you want to follow more of what's going on with my Common Memory tour, you can follow me on social media, but you can also I have a GoFundMe where people can help support this tour and get updates about the tour. And I'm basically trying to take this tour because of the attack that the Trump administration is doing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how they're trying to really reframe the narrative of our nation's history. A lot of universities and organizations are unwilling or hesitant to bring me in. And so my speaking invitations have plummeted in the past few months. But individuals and families and people are desperate, wanting to talk about these types of things. And so while I am not getting many formal invitations to speak at large events, I'm finding if I can go out and get groups to host me, and even if they can't afford to bring me in to pay an honorarium or to cover my travel expenses, if I can say, hey, I have other partners around the country who are helping me fund this. We just want to bring this in. You can pay what you're able to, but we have other people who are helping us fund these things so that we can continue this conversation and really bring it up to a national level. I invite you to follow me on GoFundMe. Go to my Common Memory Tour 2025. You can make a donation there. You can get updates about how the tour is going and about where we're going to be next and how the events are going. And even some of the recordings of the events I'm going to be posting there. I'm also putting some of these things on my Patreon, which is another place that you can go deeper with me into the conversation. And I'm going to put my Patreon there as well. And so, yeah, these are the different things that I'm working on right now. I am doing everything I can to live fully into the truth that Black lives matter, Native lives matter, women need to be included, LGBTQ lives matter, and that white people are not superior. I'm not trying to dismiss, dehumanize, shame, cancel anybody. I want to see us have dialogue at a human level where no one's above and no one's below. Right here, my relatives, this is where we can walk in beauty. This is where we can connect on a human level. This is where we can live sustainably. This is where we can connect. This is where we can create common memory and develop healthy community. If you would like to get a copy of my book, Unsettling Truths, you can do that on my website. I sell signed copies there. I'm not charging for shipping right now, so you can get free shipping at the moment on my website if you order a signed copy of Unsettling Truths. And if you want to get our book study special and you buy 10 copies of the book, I will give you and your study a virtual 45-minute Q&A at any point up to a year after you make the purchase. You can contact me through my assistant and schedule that on a Zoom call, and we'll get on with your book study and do a 45-minute up to an hour of Q&A regarding what you're reading in the book. My relatives, there's a lot going on. I ask you to keep in mind that the goal here is to connect at a human level. The goal is to acknowledge the humanity of everybody and to live in a world where no one's inferior and no one's superior. Our relatives, walk in beauty. Hope your second copy is as good as mine has been, and may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Haka on that.